kunja bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava kunja bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava kunja bihari. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai. Itai Gaura Premanande. Thank you all for coming for Śrimad Bhāgavatam class, and thank you for giving me a chance to speak. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasan Tato Jayamudirayat Nastaprayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So today we're reading from Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 7, entitled The Sacrifice Performed by Daksha. And we'll be reading text 9 and 10, because I think the numbers got a bit offset, so I'm trying to make it go according to the schedule. So I'll just read text 9, and then we can recite text 10 together. Sandhiyamane shirasi Daksho Rudra Vivikshitaha Sadhya Sukta Ivotasto Tadrishe Chakrado Mridam. When the animal's head was fixed on the body of King Daksha, Daksha was immediately brought to consciousness, and as he awakened from sleep, the king saw Lord Shiva standing before him. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The example given here is that Daksha got up as if he were awakened from deep sleep. In Sanskrit, this is called Supta Avotasto. The meaning is that after a man awakens from sleep, he immediately remembers all the duties which he must execute. Daksha was killed, and his head was taken away and burned to ashes. His body was lying dead, but by the grace of Lord Shiva, as soon as the head of a goat was joined to the body, Daksha came back to consciousness again. This indicates that consciousness is also individual. Daksha actually took another body when he took on the head of a goat, but because consciousness is individual, his consciousness remained the same, although his bodily condition changed. Thus, bodily construction has nothing to do with the development of consciousness. Consciousness is carried with the transmigration of the soul. There are many instances of this in Vedic history, such as the case of Maharaj Bharat. After quitting his body as a king, Maharaj Bharat was transferred to the body of a deer, but he retained the same consciousness. He knew that although formally he was King Bharat, he had been transferred to the body of a deer because of his absorption in thinking of a deer at the time of his death. In spite of his having the body of a deer, however, his consciousness was as good as it was in the body of King Bharat. The arrangement by the Lord is so nice that if a person's consciousness is turned into Krishna consciousness, there is no doubt that in his next life, he will be a great devotee of Krishna, even if he is offered a different type of body. verse 10. So this one we can recite. First we'll do just the word and then we'll go line by line. Tada Vrishadvaja. It's Vrishadvaja Dvesha Kali Atma Prajapati Shivavalokad Abhavat Sharadrada Ivamala Tada Vrishadvaja Dvesha Kalilatma Prajapati Shivavalokad Abhavat Sharadrada Ivamala Tada Vrishadvaja Dvesha Kalilatma Prajapati Shivavalokad Abhavat Sharadrada Ivamala Tada Vrishadvaja Dvesha Kalilatma Prajapati Shivavalokad Abhavat Sharadrada Ivamala Tada Vrishadvaja Dvesha Kalilatma Prajapati Shivavalokad Abhavat Sharadrada Ivamala
Kalyatma Prajapati Pavalokan Abhavat Radhada Imamalaha Davishadavajresha Kalilatma Prajapati Shivavalokan Abhavat Radhada Imamalaha Davishadavajresha Kalilatma Prajapati Shivavalokan Abhavat Radhada Imamalaha Davishadvaja Dvesha Kalilatma Prajapati Shivavalokan Abhavat Sharadrada Imamalaha
Lady
Davishadvaja Dvesha Kalilatma Prajapati Shivavalokan Abhavat Sharadrada Imamalaha
Tada at that time Vrishadvaja Lord Shiva who rides on a bull Dvesha envy Kalilatma polluted heart Prajapati King Daksha Shiva Lord Shiva Avalokat by seeing him Abhavat became Sharat in the autumn Hrida lake Iva like Amala cleansed. Translation. At that time, when Daksha saw Lord Shiva, who rides upon a bull, his heart, which was polluted by envy of Lord Shiva, was immediately cleansed, just as the water in a lake is cleansed by autumn rains. Purport. Here is an example of why Lord Shiva is called auspicious. If anyone sees Lord Shiva with devotion and reverence, his heart is immediately cleansed. King Daksha was polluted by envy of Lord Shiva, and yet by seeing him with a little love and devotion, his heart immediately became cleansed. In the rainy season, the reservoirs of water become dirty and muddy. But as soon as the autumn rain comes, all the water immediately becomes clear and transparent. Similarly, although Daksha's heart was impure because of his having slandered Lord Shiva, for which he was severely punished, Daksha now came to consciousness, and just by seeing Lord Shiva with veneration and respect, he became immediately purified. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Sapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchatatvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Ivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumata Śrimad Ratnagar Simhasanasto Śrimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastali Bi Sevyamano Smarami Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Guru Dasa Jayaveta Swami Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha So I seek the blessings of all the wonderful devotees here, especially Ram Roy Prabhu and all the senior devotees present. Please bless me to say something that is uplifting, purifying for myself and everyone, and pleasing to Sri Sri Radha Govinda and all the devotees. So in this verse, well, in the previous verse, it's described how Daksha is like a man who's asleep who's now being awakened to consciousness when the goat, the head of the goat has been placed on his head. And that's the situation we're in this world. Jeev jago, Gora Chandra bole. Kota nidra jao maya, disachira kole. Wake up, sleeping souls. How long will we remain sleeping in the lap of the witch called Maya? That's our situation in this material world where we're asleep to what our real duty is. It's saying that Daksha was awakened to his actual duty. And our real duty is to be servants of Krishna. That's our eternal constitutional position. Jivira Swaruphoy Krishnera Nityadas. But we've forgotten that and therefore we're asleep. And it's only by the mercy of the pure devotee that we can be awakened to our actual consciousness. So this is Canto 4 of Śrimad Bhāgavatam, and we may remember in the end of Canto 3, there was a verse there were a few verses that describe devotion in the modes of material nature. And after those verses, it's so fitting how in Canto 4, we have different pastimes to illustrate the different devotion in the modes of material nature. So in this pastime of Daksha cursing Lord Shiva, we have devotion in the mode of ignorance. And later on, we'll see when in the pastime of Maharaj Dhruva, that will be devotion in the mode of passion. And when we get to Prithu Maharaj's pastimes, I will be devotional in the mode of goodness. So the verse in Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 29, verse 8, which describes devotion in the mode of ignorance, says, devotional service executed by a person who is envious, proud, violent, and angry, and who is a separatist, is considered to be in the mode of darkness. So that perfectly describes the situation. In summary, we know that Daksha offended Lord Shiva due to his envious nature and his own pride, which are two things mentioned here, envious and proud. And then he started violently attacking him with words. That's another thing, violent in this verse from Śrimad Bhāgavatam, describing devotion in the mode of ignorance. So after that, naturally, Lord Shiva's followers cursed Daksha, and then Daksha's followers cursed Lord Shiva, and it was like what we see these days on Facebook, one of those, keyboard rages where everyone's just cursing each other, counter cursing, and causing widespread offenses in public. So as the story progresses, Sati couldn't handle this animosity between her father and her husband, and therefore she voluntarily left her body. She basically set herself on fire. So now, after Daksha was basically chastised and killed, and then given the body of a goat, finally he comes to his senses and gives up his pride and envy and can see Lord Shiva the way he's meant to be seen, as a pure devotee. So I was thinking about this topic in relation to the Sri Manashiksha, because I attended this amazing seminar by Mother Urmila. If anyone hasn't heard her seminar on Manashiksha, please listen. It is incredible. And it's basically an analysis of pride and the different stages in which pride can enter our heart and how it affects us at different points in our spiritual journey. And it goes through from very obvious external levels of pride to very, very subtle, deep internal levels of pride in the heart. So it was a nice assessment of myself when I was doing the seminar with her, and it was just transformative for everyone. There were a few verses there in the middle which she called the heart surgery verses, because when you read them and go through it, it actually feels like heart surgery. We really, really, getting those anarthas, they're moving around in the heart. We're like trying to claw them out, and it feels like painful almost, like spiritually painful. So I just wanted to go through that analysis, because I think it's very relatable to the situation with Daksha and for ourselves mostly, because all of these pastimes are for us to learn something from it. So in Manashiksha, the first verse describes how we need to develop excessive and unprecedented attachment to Sri Guru, Vrindavan, the devotees, which includes devotees of Vrindavan and the devotees on this planet, Diksha Mantra, the holy name, and the process of surrender to the divine couple. So it starts off really wonderful and inspiring. And Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, who's the author of this book, I noticed in other books of his, it starts off with the same theme of surrender and taking shelter. Like for Mukta Charitra, he has that verse, Nama Shesta Manu Api Sachi Putram Atra Swarupam Shri Rupam Dasik Rajam Urupurim Maturim Gostavatim Radha Kundam Girivaram Aho Radhikama Davasam Tato Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi, which means, I bow down to the lotus feet of my spiritual master, by whose causeless mercy I have obtained the supreme holy name, the service of the son of Sachimata, the association of Srila Swarup Damodar, Rupa Goswami, and his elder brother Sanatan Goswami, the supreme abode of Mathura, the blissful abode of Vrindavan, the divine Radha Kund and Govardhan Hill, and the desire within my heart for loving service to Sri Radhika and Madhava in Vrindavan. So it's the same 6 items in one sense, that he's mentioning in Manashiksha also that we need to develop unprecedented attachment to. But what is stopping us from developing that attachment? It's all the levels of pride that come up in the following verses of Manashiksha. And it starts off external. So in verse 2, it's described there's a pride in being either a good person or a bad person, just materially speaking. When we're a good person, we have some pride about it when we're living in the mode of goodness. And even if we're a bad person, like if we're a rebel, there's some pride in being a rebel. And then in the next verse, verse 3, there's this, in spiritual life, there's this pride of impatience where we feel like, I've been practicing. Why am I not a pure devotee yet? Where's my prema now? And she describes it as being like a husband who's cheated on his wife for many years. And then he's had several affairs. And then now he's wanting to get back together. And if she takes him back, it won't be immediate. It's not that immediately he'll just come back and say, okay, I'm sorry, I want to be with you, and then she'll just accept it. First, there'll naturally be some conditions. There'll be a list of ways that he can redeem himself. Like she may give him something to fulfill, some goals to fulfill. And if he goes through all of that, he may think, okay, I've done it, can I come back? But that's like an achievement mentality. It's like, I'm doing what I can just to get back in the house. You know, she may open the door, but she won't necessarily let him in. And then, so it's like, he can't just do that and expect to be immediately let in. She has to allow him in when she desires. So in the same way, we have turned away from Krishna for unlimited lifetimes. We don't know how long we've been in the material world for. And therefore, it's not like we can just chant Hare Krishna once and then immediately we'll think, okay, why is Krishna not accepting me back in the spiritual world? Why am I not a pure devotee yet? It's because it's for Krishna to decide when he wants to allow us back. We have to put in a constant endeavor. We cannot do like a checkbox in our spiritual life and think, I'll get initiated, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll get second initiation, I'll do this service and that service, and then say, okay, now I can be a pure devotee. It's really for Krishna to decide when. He can choose at any time to accept us back into the spiritual world. So that's another kind of pride that's more related to our spiritual life. When we're practicing Krishna consciousness nicely, we can still develop this level of pride. And then the following 4 verses, she calls the heart surgery verses, because it goes through pride in speech, the body, the mind, and the heart. So it's getting deeper and deeper, as we can see. And that's where the language gets very strong and very, it's a very emphatic appeal to give up pride. So in verse 4, the topic is the pride in speech that we can have. So it's like saying, I'm doing everything, so it doesn't matter what I say. And I think we all experience this. We're all devotees. We're practicing Krishna consciousness, so it doesn't matter how we interact with people so much. That's not the crux of it. The crux is that we're devotees. And this is, I know I personally have struggled with this. This is, she's saying another, well, Raghunath Das Goswami is saying another level of pride. And the idea is that everything gets created from sound. We know that this whole material world is created from sound. So, and our material life is also created from sound. So it kind of does matter what we say. What we talk about does matter. So the idea was that if we're practicing Krishna consciousness, but we speak in a mundane way, we're always talking about mundane things, and that's actually damaging to our Krishna consciousness. And if we think that it's not damaging, that's a form of pride. Because we think, I can say anything, it doesn't matter because I'm practicing. And it said here, mundane talk is like a prostitute who steals the wealth of bhakti. That's like strong language, to think that if you're just speaking mundanely, it's actually a prostitute stealing our wealth. And that's what prostitutes do, they steal wealth. And another Another thing to talk about that shouldn't be discussed is liberation, the desire for liberation. Because that's compared to a tiger that will eat you. So there's a lot of imagery in Manashiksha, which I really like. And even having attachment, and then it goes deeper, a deeper level, like having attachment to Lord Narayan is something that also shouldn't be necessarily wanted, even though that's a very exalted level. But here Raghunath Das Goswami is speaking about, wanting pure devotional service to Krishna. So even that wouldn't be considered appropriate. So it gets very deep and very advanced. But the mood is that our speech should be meant for service. We should only speak if it's in the mood of serving. And we know the 5 austerities of speech from Bhagavad Gita: truthfulness, speech must be pleasing, beneficial, not agitating to others, and based on scripture. And Mother Urmila says that the most important austerity of speech is actually that it must be beneficial. I thought that was interesting, because I couldn't choose from the 5 which one was most important, but she said it must be beneficial. And the least important is that it must be pleasing. Because sometimes you say something that's true and it's not pleasing, but you can't please anyone. But the point is that our speech should be in line with what we're trying to do. And then verse 5 speaks about the pride in our actions. Well, actually, before that, in this topic of speech, we notice this with Daksha. He's doing all these austerities and sacrifices, but his speech is offensive, and it's cursing and counter-cursing and just creating a disturbance in the sacrifice. And then verse 5 speaks about pride in our actions, which is basically hypocrisy, where we're practicing Krishna consciousness, but the 6 enemies are still attacking us, and they're still controlling our actions and making us do things that we don't want to do, but we're still devotees. And if we think it's okay because I'm still a devotee, then that's another level of pride. And it's the imagery here is that the 6 enemies are described to be like thieves that are, they're like, got you by the neck, handcuffing you, and they're just controlling all your actions. And then sometimes we actually take shelter of the 6 enemies because we have them. We say like, oh, I need anger in order to fight. Or I need greed in order to, work in the world and have a job. So I need to be like ambitious in that way and have greed. So in Mother Urmila's seminar, she was saying that these are ways that we fool ourselves into thinking that we can engage the 6 enemies in Krishna's service. And she said that it is possible to engage them if we are using them in the transcendental form, not in the material form. And she gave an example of how once someone was blaspheming Prabhupada, and she got really, really angry, and she just, defeated them in a very angry mood. And then she was really trying to assess, am I doing this in a material way or in a transcendental way? Like, is what I've done, is it mundane anger or is it spiritual anger? And she said that she noticed that when the way to test is that it burns. When it's mundane anger, it will burn and we will not feel happy from it. But she noticed when she did that, because it was a service to Prabhupada, she was glorifying and defending her guru, she was feeling purified. She was feeling happy and purified from that. So she's saying that's the test for us to know whether when we're engaging these like lower tendencies in Krishna service, if we're actually doing it the right way. If it's done with the material intention, it will burn and it will cause misery. It won't make us happy. And if it's done the right way, it will purify us and make us actually happy. And then in verse 6, she speaks about the pride in the mind, which is a very deep level. And it's where what we do is apparently service, but it's not. What we think we're doing a service, but we're actually not doing a service. And this is something I think we all experience, where we can fool ourselves into thinking this. And this is something you can see Daksha's also experiencing, where he's doing these big sacrifices. He's thinking this is very Krishna conscious or very transcendental, but the mood, the mentality, everything about it is completely mundane, and it's actually causing more of a disturbance than anything. And so apparently, yeah, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that this is when we think the thieves of the six enemies are dead, but they're actually not dead. So we think we're not being attacked by them anymore, but we still are. And she described different examples of devotees who experience this, different situations where we think we're doing a service, but it's actually not a service, but we won't get into that. But the point is that she was saying, for this particular type of pride, we need to go to Krishna directly. This is where we have to go and be honest with Krishna and pray and beg Krishna to show us the truth, show us whether what we're doing is service or if it's not service. Because if we go to the devotees, they will tell us, but we may not listen to them because we don't want to face the fact that we're not actually doing a service, we're doing something else. So she's saying, just go to Krishna with honesty and pray, and that's the solution. And Krishna will actually show us. And then when we can see, we have to decide, do we want to continue it or do we want to stop it? And then when we decide for Krishna, then he'll easily remove the Maya. And then this was the last verse based on pride in Manashiksha, before everything gets very beautiful and light and happy again. The deepest level, the pride of the heart, where we think, I'm such a good devotee. And we have this desire for prestige and honor. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that desire for prestige is an unchaste lady, and she has a boyfriend called deceit. And it makes sense because when we want to be honored, we cannot be honest. That's why the deceit will find us. So it's very nice to think about this. And something that was mentioned, I think it's a quote, but I don't know by who, is that praise is a lady who never gets married because the sadhus don't want her and she doesn't want the non-sadhus. So that's the situation we're in if we want praise. Praise will never follow the sadhus. Sadhus don't want to be praised, right? And praise doesn't go to people who are not sadhus, really. So praise is something we should avoid. This whole desire for prestige is something that we should avoid. And the cure for this, it's written in Manushiksha, is to serve the generals in Krishna's army. So here we go to the devotees to really combat pride in our hearts and in our spiritual lives. And then after this, Manashiksha gets lighter and more blissful, because once we get through all those layers of pride, then we can really have deep, sincere prayers to remove the wickedness in our heart, and we can really take shelter of Krishna. And then we can have deeper levels of meditation. Then our mind, our Krishna consciousness is in a more it's being practiced in a more pure way. So, and then the later verses are very exalted, and I don't understand them. But it's just, I thought it was so relevant here to this topic, because pride is something we're all facing. It's very deeply embedded in our hearts, and this whole pastime of Daksha, it's meant for us to see how we're also practicing Krishna consciousness in the mode of ignorance a lot of the time. So the example is here we can see that Daksha had a very severe experience of having his head cut off, and then finally when the head of a goat was put on him, then he could come to his senses. We may not have such severe experiences in our life, and that means it might take a lot longer, because it just happened and then he was purified very quickly. For us, it may be our whole life. We may experience this inability to accept our own shortcomings, to notice the pride, the envy in our hearts, and to combat it. So it says here that Daksha, when he was purified, it's because he saw Lord Shiva with love and respect. That's how he got purified. And we know from Shastra that when we see the Lord or the pure devotees, it has to be with a mood of love and respect. Otherwise, we're not actually seeing them. When we see in Krishna book, there's so many demons that saw Krishna, but they didn't actually see him because they saw him through the eyes of envy. And therefore, they couldn't understand his nature, his position. So there's the verse from Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena, Santa Sadeva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti, Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Guna Swarupam, Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shama Sundar, Krishna himself, with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eyes of devotion tinged with the salve of love. So it's only possible to advance when we can see the Lord and his devotees as they rightfully are, with devotion and love. And that's what helped Daksha in this case, that he just saw Shiva with a little bit of respect and love, and then he got purified. And Lord Shiva, we know, is the most exalted devotee of Krishna. So seeing him in that way and removing his offensive mentality from the devotee is what eventually led to his purification and reinstatement as a devotee. So yesterday at Matchless Gifts, His Holiness Jayaveta Maharaj was speaking about a devotee who was really good at everything in service, really inspiring, had really good qualities, very gentle behavior, did a lot of service in uh, the book publishing and gave really good classes. But over time, he lost faith in Srila Prabhupada and in the philosophy. And it's that lack of submission that took him downwards. And eventually, he ended up leaving Krishna consciousness. And I was thinking, when I was hearing that, I was kind of reflecting. I had like so many questions, but couldn't really articulate them at the time. But I was really reflecting, like, if we're doing so many things right, how is it that we can still go downwards? How is it? And it's this idea of not seeing the pure devotees the way they're meant to be seen, as pure devotees of Krishna, and having the right attitude and right mood towards them. Because Maharaj was saying that he stopped, it's like he stopped seeing Prabhupada as that highest spiritual authority figure. He started not listening so much, being not submissive. So I took that as a very strong lesson that we should not see devotees in a mundane way, because that can lead to our downfall. And the way we can try to see devotees in their actual way that they're meant to be seen is by Shastra Chakshusha, seeing through the eyes of scripture. We can see pure devotees from the scripture. We can understand the qualities of devotees around us based on what we know devotees should be, advanced devotees should be. And therefore, offer love, appreciation, kindness. There's in this verse here, there's this analogy of how when it's the rainy season, all the water becomes dirty and muddy. But then when the rain comes, it just clears everything up. And I never understood how this works really, even though we read this analogy so often about the ink in a cup of water, and how to get the ink out is to just keep filling it with water. Because I thought it's always just going to be there. It's always going to be a small trace of ink. But actually, Mother Urmila shared this video where practically you can see there's a cup of water, there's some ink, and then there's just water running through it. And you can see how that water just drives the ink out, like slowly. It's a very slow process, not quick, but eventually it drives it out. And and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to drive out the negative qualities, our anarthas from our heart, by filling ourselves up with Krishna consciousness and with service, with the holy names, with spiritual activity, all kinds of services, deity worship, harinam, reading the shastra, associating with devotees in a favorable way. There's this verse from Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, verse 42. Bhakti pareshanu bhavo viraktir anyatra chai satrika ekakala prapadyamanasya yatasnatasyus tusti pusti shud apayonugasam. Devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things. These three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. So this is what we're trying to do. Simultaneously give up the lower and embrace the higher. Like we read in Bhagavad Gita, param drisvani vartate. You can only give up something lower when we have a higher taste. So when we fill up our lives with Krishna consciousness, then all these lower tendencies, lower emotions, lower behaviors will eventually leave us. I was also reflecting about how this experience of Daksha being killed was humbling. It was actually humiliating, this experience. But because it purified him, it was actually a very positive experience. And now we have this in our lives also in this world where we go through deeply, deeply humbling and humiliating experiences. I just went through one very recently, which some of you know about. So it's here to purify us. And if we can take it as Krishna's plan for our upliftment, to give us something better, then it makes the whole experience much more relishable, actually. If we're always fighting it, if we think, I've been done an injustice, if Daksha came out of this experience thinking after that, after being killed, after having the goat's head, like, still with the same mentality, Lord Shiva is wrong, I'm superior, it would have just defeated the purpose of the whole experience, right? So, and I was looking at my own life, especially recently, but always, it's like we're given these experiences to be humbled. And if we come out of it blaming other people, thinking, I didn't do anything wrong, this is someone else's fault, all the time, then this whole experience was useless, and it's going to come again in our lives, actually, from experience. So it's important to take the lesson. I know this because like last week when I was starting to like think about this topic to prepare for this class, I was thinking about like everything I'm going to say theoretically. But then when you get the practical experience of having a situation that you just have to accept as Krishna's plan, which is not comfortable, but it's somehow better because you know theoretically that Krishna's plan is always best, then makes it easier to accept. And then after that, when we accept it, like this is for the best, then we can see, then Krishna reveals exactly how it's for the best. And then we can see it in that way. So Daksha, by receiving the head of a goat and actually being purified, is a lesson to us that when we go through these experiences to take the lesson and transform, the only reason we get these experiences of humiliation is because we want to be in control. That's why we have a plan, and we want our plan to be Krishna's plan. We want it to be the same. And if Krishna has a different plan, we're upset. So that's why we get humiliated, we get humbled. And if we're very attached to our plan, then we're not going to see the lesson. We're not going to see the arrangement of Krishna in it. And it comes from, it's not easy to just accept Krishna's plan. It's easier to accept like our mother's plan sometimes, because we know our mother loves us in most cases. Our mother wants the best for us. So if your mom's giving you a plan, it's because she sees that to be the best. But if we don't know Krishna, then we'll think, why is his plan different from mine? He's because we're not cultivating that relationship. So the first thing is to get to know Krishna, get to know his qualities, his activities. Like, who is he? He's Suradam Sarvabhutanam, the benefactor of all living entities. He's the best friend of everyone. He's our greatest well-wisher. So when we look at him like that, we can see that his plan actually is the best, because why would someone who's our best friend want anything negative for us? We should be confident that Krishna only wants the best for us, and that whatever he gives us is only going to be for the best, and we should be grateful for it. I know when my spiritual master, His Holiness Kirambakhanana Maharaj, was like in the months leading to him leaving his body, he was completely free from any attachment to this world and to remaining here. He was ready to go back to Godhead. And all of us were obviously distraught and grief-stricken even before. Like, we had many months to grieve before he actually left. And he would tell us, everything is going to be okay, because this is Krishna's plan. And Krishna's plan is always the best. And all of us couldn't, I mean, at least for myself, I can say, how could I accept that that's the best? How could you accept something like that? But he could say it with a firm conviction that for himself, of course, it was the best. He's going back to Godhead. But for us also, he could see that there would be something good in that he's going to empower his disciples. He's going to send blessings and mercy from the spiritual world. And he always said now he can be everywhere, Before he could only be in one place, now he can be everywhere. He can watch all of us simultaneously, and he can be present with us simultaneously. So in that way, it's very, I'm not saying it's good, but there was something good that came from it, that we can feel his presence now, everyone, in a very deep way. Another thing I wanted to mention in this pastime is that it gives us an example of what not to do with the devotees. Like, it shows us what our mood should not be towards devotees. And when I think about what our mood should be, I look at Chaitanya Charitamrita, because in that book we see so much about relationships. Like, Chaitanya Charitamrita doesn't have so much action, so much drama of like different fights happening, huge battles or anything. It's really just about relationships. It's about devotees and how they interact with each other, and how they relish the depth of devotional relationships amongst each other. And something that was really heart-touching to me was how devotees would petition Lord Chaitanya to give mercy to someone else. Whenever Lord Chaitanya, for the pastime, would kind of reject someone, maybe not reject, but would distance himself temporarily from someone, all the devotees would run to, beg Lord Chaitanya, please give this devotee your mercy. We see that with Mukunda Datta, who was listening to Mayavad philosophy, and Lord Chaitanya says, no, I don't want to see him. And the devotees were pleading with Lord Chaitanya, please give him your mercy. And then Lord Chaitanya was adamant. He says, only in, I don't know, it was like 1 billion years or a million, I don't know, I forgot the number. And then Mukunda Datta celebrated, and therefore the Lord said, okay, he can come now, because he celebrated that he will eventually see the Lord. And then there was the pastime of Chota Haridas, who Lord Chaitanya distanced himself from because of the strict standard of sannyas, and how Chota Haridas was interacting with a woman. And Lord Chaitanya was setting a very strong example. And the devotees were begging him, please. And he says, no, I don't want to be anywhere near Chota Haridas. And then the next day, Swarup Damodar Goswami goes again to Lord Chaitanya and petitions him, please, my Lord, please give him your mercy. And he says, if you keep doing this, I will leave. Don't talk about this anymore. And then later, Paramananda Puri comes, who is actually Lord Chaitanya's senior, because he's a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. So he's the god brother of Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master. And he would ask about Chota Haridas, like, please give him your mercy. And then Lord Chaitanya was like, nope, and decided, I'm actually going to leave now. But look at the mood. The pastime is illustrating a very strong point about sannyas. But look at the mood of the devotees, how they are to each other. There's no envy. They are not celebrating that, oh, the Lord is excluding someone else, so I get more time with the Lord. They're not thinking like this. The whole mood of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is just sharing the mercy. They feel actual compassion for each other. They want the best for the other person. And it was just such a beautiful, non-envious society. And so I was thinking about that and appreciating being here actually, because I feel like it's very easy to cultivate good relationships here. It's so easy because there's so much to appreciate in all the devotees who live here. Every time I come, I'm very grateful because I just I just see the good qualities of everyone just increasing and increasing and increasing. And every time I come, there's even more good qualities, more services to appreciate. And so I think this is a very nice, ecstatic place. And I want to end by saying that we're quoting Srila Prabhupada in this letter to Yamuna Devi on March 2nd, 1970. Krishna consciousness means full cooperation with Krishna, and Krishna means with all his entourage. We should always remember this. Just like when we speak of a tree, it includes the root, the trunk, the branches, the leaves, the flowers, everything. Therefore, to love Krishna means to love him along with all his name, his fame, his qualities, his entourage, his abode, his devotees, etc. So, I want to end there, and if there's any comments, questions, reflections from anyone, please share.
One of the most beautiful things was Srila Prabhupada conveying the blessings of his spiritual master upon all of you. You were working so hard, so sincerely, so nicely. I'm so much pleased, and I'm praying that my spiritual master bless you hundreds and hundreds of times over. So, disciplic succession and going all the way back to Krishna, actually the perfection of all good relationships, pleasing such a personality as Srila Prabhupada, who is so absolute dedicated to such a personality as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, perfection of life.
Nothing else?
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class. I really appreciate it. When you were talking about pride, I've thought about the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 30. And it says, even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is considered to be saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. So I was wondering, if I had pride, but I was doing my devotional service, could I still be a saintly person or still go back to Godhead? All right.
According to the verse, yes. I think what I find about that verse is that it's so nice for us to use that when we're referring to others, you know. So when we're thinking about other people, we think, okay, they've made a mistake, but they're still saintly. It's not like necessarily for us to look at ourselves like, okay, I'm making mistakes, I'm full of pride, I'm still saintly, because then defeats the purpose a bit of our attempt, you know. So it says we should be strict with ourselves but lenient with others. Of course, we shouldn't now, you know, get into like depression because we have pride. You know, it's a normal, it's a common thing in the material world. We all have pride. So we're all on a journey together. It's just about understanding how that journey moves, and having the information from the scripture helps us to understand it. Otherwise, we could be thinking we're advancing for years and years and years and just not moving at all. Not moving at all. We could have first initiation, second initiation, whatever. We're not moving if we're not introspecting and reflecting within ourselves and seeing how everything that Krishna is giving us and what it's meant to do, like how it's meant to transform us. Kantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sai Gaur Premanande.
Surabhi-kunja.